So bonjour, welcome everyone. I have a few announcements to make while the rest of our audience is coming into the room. We are expecting probably pretty close to maybe 75 or 100 people today. So let me get through those original or the first slides. You are in the right place if you're expecting to see Cara Black, and we'll be introducing her shortly. Let's go to our next slide, Melissa. We want to remind you that we have quite a few other events coming up soon. Some of these are in English, some of them are in French, clearly labeled now. And we're sure that you will enjoy those events as well. These are absolutely free for members of the Alliance Française, no matter where you are, pretty much in the United States. And our next slide. Most of you in the audience are already members, but a few of you might not be. So we just want to remind you that we are the world's largest network of Alliance Françaises in the world. We help 25,000 learners of French every year at our facilities from coast to coast. So if you have an Alliance Française near you, we encourage you to find them at afusa.org. Or if you would like to take online classes, you can have pretty much your pick from any alliances throughout the United States. So do check that out at afusa.org. And our next slide. We want to just remind you about our logistics and our format. We want you to stay on mute during the presentation. I think Melissa probably has everybody force muted. We encourage you to stay on speaker view so that when Cara comes on camera shortly, you'll see her. And then you are free to put your questions in the chat throughout the presentation, your questions and your comments. You know, Zoom's pretty dependable, but if you do have technical issues, then all we can say is sign back in again after a couple of minutes using the original Zoom link, and hopefully you'll find us here. And then FYI, as you've already noticed, this event is being recorded. It will be put on our YouTube channel probably by Monday. And we expect our total runtime today to be right about an hour. And our next slide. So it's now my great pleasure to introduce Cara Black. She is the author of many, many books. And in the New York Times bestselling series, Aimée Leduc series, as well as the thriller 3 Hours in Paris, which we covered with Cara just over a year ago. Cara has received multiple nominations for prestigious awards. She has received a citation from the Washington Post World Book of the Year. Cara, like many of us in the audience, is very much a Francophile, and she is the recipient, unlike the rest of us in the audience, of the Médaille de la Ville de Paris, the Paris City Medal, which is awarded in recognition of her contributions to international culture. She is also invited as the guest of honor at many conferences, including the Paris Polar Crime Festival and Left Coast Crime. So, with, if you can believe it, 400,000 books in print, the Aimée Leduc series has been translated into German, Norwegian, Spanish, French, Italian, many, many languages. Cara lives in San Francisco with her husband and visits Paris frequently. Now, she'll be talking today mostly about the murder at the Porte de Versailles, which was just released and is available at your local independent bookseller and on Amazon. It was released on March 15th. And I have read other Aimée Leduc books in the series. I haven't read this one because it's freshly out. So I'm excited to learn about this 20th installment where the Parisian private investigator Aimée will be in a dangerous web of international spycraft and terrorist threats in Paris's 15th arrondissement. So with that, let's take it away, Cara. Vous avez la parole.
Merci beaucoup, Linda. Bonjour, Linda and Melissa and toutes les personnes qui viennent aujourd'hui. Happy to see everyone. Thank you for coming. And thank you, Alliance Française, for hosting me. As usual, yes, I'm a devoted Francophile, as many of you, probably all of you are. And I'm really thrilled to talk about 3 hours, not 3 hours in Paris. I did that last time. This one, that's right, the murder at the Porte de Versailles. So briefly, just to run up to tell you where we are, Aimée Leduc, my private investigator, who's half French and half American, who is taller and thinner than I am, and lives on the Ile Saint-Louis because that's where I would like to live, okay? So She lives there. She inherited a detective agency. And through the books, that I've written, there's 20 now in the series, she has gone from inheriting this detective agency, turning it from missing persons to computer security, and hiring her partner, René Friand, who is a computer hacker and 4 foot tall, vertically challenged. And so we met her, we've gone through the different periods in her life. The first book, Murder in the Marais, happens in 1993. And now we are in 2001. Murder at the Porte de Versailles takes place right after 9/11. So just to put this in our minds where you are, put it in a time frame. People are paying in francs in Paris. You can smoke in the cafes, and yes, people have cell phones, and they've had them since the 90s. So now we meet Aimée Leduc. So it's about 7, 8 years later in her life. We've gone through the stories in the different arrondissements. And now right after 9/11, we start the story in November. And it's a very chilly November, and Aimée is at the Père Lachaise Cemetery, many of you know it, to commemorate her father's death. His ashes are there, and she's brought with her her daughter, 3-year-old Chloe. Now, we've met Chloe before. We knew Aimée in Murder in Pigalle when she was pregnant. She was pregnant when it was the World Cup in Paris. If any of you had been there, it was crazy in Paris. And so Aimée Leduc is very pregnant in Paris during that story, and now Chloe is 3 years old. And it's very bittersweet for Aimée because Chloe was born on the anniversary of her father's death. So we go right to Aimée's apartment, the wonderful apartment on Ile Saint-Louis. And it's a 3-year-old birthday party for Chloe. But, Parisian birthdays are a little different from ours anyway. For the guests, there's, vintage champagne, foie gras, a special cake that Aimée's girlfriend, his best girlfriend, Martine, who we've met many times, has arranged with macaroons. It's, quite nice. And Chloe is so excited as a 3-year-old girl. She's been running around for days in these new zebra boots she got. Already a fashionista like her mother, and she sleeps with them, won't take them off. And at the party is Chloe's biological father, Melak, a former policeman who was in the elite counter-terrorist squad. We've met him before. But Melak has moved to Brittany. He has a farm, and he's urging very strongly that Aimée move with him to Brittany so Chloe can live by the sea. He's got goats and horses, and they can have a garden. The air is so fresh. Aimée can work remotely. Now, I have to say, I think that came from writing the story during the pandemic because, and not that it couldn't have happened then, but, it's true. I mean, Aimée could have figured something out because she's a computer whiz and worked from Brittany. So that's weighing in her mind, but this is her business. She has a partner, and she's also feeling super guilty because what if she's being selfish? What if this is better for her daughter? But Aimée grew up in Paris, and she's the kind of gal who likes the cafe at the corner. And she doesn't think the farmyard has a cafe at the end of it. So that's another issue. Everyone in Aimée's universe, the world of Aimée Leduc, her godfather, her good friends, Boris and Michou, who babysit Chloe and who are neighbors of Renee are there. Everyone is there in her world. And she thinks, do I really want to leave this? Anyway, time for presents. They open the presents, and then Boris realizes, he's forgotten Chloe's birthday gift on his desk at work. And he works at the police laboratory. And so he finishes his champagne, hops in a taxi, goes back to get the gift. And the gifts are opened, everyone is going home, and Amy's like, where's Boris? What happened? They get a phone call, and Boris is found in the rubble. There's been a bomb explosion in the police laboratory. He's alive, pulled out of the rubble, taken to the hospital, but they find traces of explosive under his fingernails. And so he is the top suspect in this bomb explosion that destroyed the police laboratory where he was a manager. And Aimée is horror stricken. So that's really the beginning of the story. And we see how Aimée is like, Boris went to get Chloe's birthday present. This is crazy. This is, he works there. Why would he do this? But of course, the police find evidence that it could only be Boris. The laboratory techs who work with Boris say, turn against him. Everyone is against him. So that's really the kind of background of this story. And so Aimée is investigating, and the story takes place in the 15th arrondissement, which has the largest population, or the population of Bordeaux, actually. It's huge. And it's a large arrondissement, and it's very, very residential. You may have gone through it to go somewhere else because there aren't any monuments there. But it's the only thing you might have heard of is the Parc Georges Brassens, or if you left your sunglasses or umbrella on the metro, you would go to the Lost and Found there in the 15th, which is around the corner from the police laboratory. This huge objet trouvé, and you can go in there and you might be able to find your sunglasses or umbrella if someone turned it in. It's very Balzacian when you get in. It's all done by paper, and you fill out a form, and they have the background. They have, like a mountain of glasses. And so it's really interesting. Anyway, so lots of the 15th, which I discovered, and around there is part of the old Paris, the very village feeling. Aimée is very familiar with it because her dog, her bichon frisé, Miles Davis, or they call him Miles Davis, eats horse meat. So she goes to Monsieur Lebeau's one of the three last horse butchers in Paris, there to get the horse meat for her dog. She loves the market there. Anyway, so she's very familiar. So I faced a challenge writing this story. We're in the background of these huge world events. The world is uneasy. We don't know if there's more terrorist things happening in a very residential area, and trying to vindicate her very good friend. And during the course of the investigation, people lied to her. And it was an exploration of when do we really lie? What do we lie about? What if a lie hurts someone? What if we lie, for selfish reasons, which we usually do? And what is the responsibility of witnessing? You witness a crime. What is your responsibility?
Thank you, Cara. That's a great setup for, telling us basically what the book is about. Some of the people in the audience might be new to your series. So could you just take us back a little bit in time and tell us about how Aimée began to run a detective agency in the first place?
Sure. I go through that in Murder on the Quai, which is QUAI, which is the prequel, which I wrote about 10 books in. I didn't, it's really the origin story of Aimée Leduc. And it comes from, well, you saw the sign, me pointing at the blue door to Duluc Detective. That was really the inspiration for Aimée Leduc. And it was run by a woman, Martine, who'd inherited it from her father and he from his father. So her grandfather started it, and it was just amazing, So when you first meet Aimée, if we go to the prequel, we see her living with her father, who raised her. He'd been a former policeman and a detective on Ile Saint-Louis, because Aimée's American mother had abandoned them when she was 8 years old. She was like a radical, like the Bader Meinhof. She got involved with shady people and left them. And Aimée has always had this wound, like realizing some women are just not meant to be mothers, and her mother is one of those. So she's been very absent. So a lot of times through the whole series, she's always looking for family, or, and dealing with that. But she's being raised by her father, and her grandfather, Claude, fell in love with him. He's a bon vivant. He goes to the Drouot auction houses. He cooks. He has wines. He has a mistress, And as we meet Aimée, she is in her first year of pre-med, in the med school. And it's so difficult, which I think pre-med the first year is. They're trying to weed, people out, and super hard. And her father is like, oh, she's going to be a doctor. She won't follow in my foot's good. She'll have a good, profession. And of course, Amy's grandfather is like, you need to follow your heart, Aimée. And of course, she's learned so many things from her father and grandfather just by living with cops, former cops, right? And helping him sometimes in the agency. When she's grown up, when he had to take her at night on a stakeout in the back of the car, right, with a blanket over her, and doing her homework, at the detective agency. So she's absorbed a lot. And so and also one person she meets during her pre-med experience in the lab is Serge, who later in the story has become, a big medical forensic person at the morgue. So she's always going to him because they have friends. They're friends, but of course he doesn't help her unless she babysits his twins, and that's. But during this story, we meet her and see how she gets involved in how she kind of is using her newly learned chops, so to say, and solve this and realize that it's true. Her heart is not in this doctor thing, even though, it's a good profession. So she has to go to what she's good at, what calls to her. And so during this crime, several murders, she goes back and does that. So it's also this thing between her and her father. We know he doesn't want her to. But when her father dies in a mysterious bomb explosion in Place Vendôme, and she sees it, she runs over to the van and picks up tries to pick up the door, and gets this burn on her hand. Her world changes. Her father is dead. She has to take over. So Amy comes from that background. She is, half French, half American. She's a kind of lone wolf, because, in detective fiction, which I'm sure everybody knows about, they're kind of different. They're outside society because they have to be, right? Their job is to observe people, to assemble evidence, to talk to people. So you're always a little outside, and so that's sort of where Amy comes from. I mean, when I go to France, I'm always an outsider, but not, quite. I mean, before I open my mouth, sometimes I can pass as a Parisian if I, have the right clothes or it's dark outside. But, of course, when I start opening my mouth, they might, pick up on my terrible accent. But I think it's okay to be an outsider, because when you write, you need to have that to observe the detail that, you wouldn't. Like, I live in San Francisco, but to write about San Francisco, I would, I take so much for granted, is I think what I'm trying to say. So.
Well, thank you. And then that's a good lead into the next question, which is, can you tell us about your research? I know the research is very important to you in your writing.
Yeah, thank you, Linda. Well, I love to research. I mean, I could do that all the time, because I have to do it in Paris. So it's really great, because I feel it's really important to whatever I write about to walk the ground, to walk the ground and see what it feels like. Of course, for my historical thriller, it was set in 1940 Paris. I walked all those places in Paris. I mean, there's a map in my book. I walked everywhere. I biked, I metroed, I did everything. And you can do that today. Of course, it doesn't look like 1940, except many of the buildings are the same. But I think you have to walk the ground to get the feeling. But I also have, over the 20 years, met police who have now retired. And, I have lunch with them. Well, I have lunch with them, even the ones not retired. And I try to have lunch and buy wine. I start pouring, and, we talk about an old case, a case that flummoxed them, what they're working on now, what procedure, and I run a lot of scenarios by them, like I did for Murder in the Porte de Versailles. I had lunch with an arsonist. No, that's wrong. An arson expert inspector who investigates arson and fire, right, of an arsonist. And he was amazing. And then he was telling me about if there was a bomb. Well, we know, I'm not revealing much, there's a bomb explosion at the police laboratory. So he sketched out for me how it would look, how the buildings fell and all the cubic, he was really great, or this, or if it was this kind, if it was gas, if it was the, so I mean, I could use that. I don't pretend that everything is perfectly correct because I'm writing fiction, but, I got the idea that it's plausible and authentic that this building would look like this, and whatever. And it was very funny because when he came to lunch, he was late, really late, and apologized profusely. And I'm like, oh, I'm just so happy he showed up, right? I'm just very thankful. And he kept, saying, I'm so sorry. And I said, that's okay. I said, where were you? And he said, well, I was at Notre Dame, This was like a couple weeks after, no, a week after Notre Dame's fire. He was the head of the arson investigation of the Notre Dame. So of course he was busy, right? And he was telling me about he couldn't actually say too much at that early stage. But I feel that was really interesting, that he really wanted me, he appreciated that I was asking him, and trying to get it right. I met people from the morgue. I've gone underground. I've gone into the sewers. I've gone a lot. I've gone into the underground of the reservoirs in Paris, kept for not for drinking water, but for the fountains. And then I talk to experts in the field. I have an appointment when I go to Paris next week. One of the men who, I think it's a man, in charge of the canal, Canal Saint-Martin and La Villette and Bassin de la Villette and all that, Canal de Luc and all that, and the people who manage the system that controls the bridges, the drawbridges, the locks, whatever. And, of course, it's automated now. But I said, oh, I want to see where the center is for automation, because I want to, in my book, I want to sabotage it. And he goes, I don't know if I'll show you that part, but I'll point to the door or something like that. So, they get into it as well. They know, and I always preface, if you tell me something and you don't want it in the book, you tell me now, it's fine. Really, it's okay. Of course, the, books are later, but for Murder in the Porte de Versailles, I needed to know about the Interpol, when Interpol was in Boulogne-Billancourt, just outside Paris, across the 15th at this time, before they moved to Lyon. My friend in the police said, you should talk to my friend who was working at Interpol when there was this bombing, which is 1986 or 87. And he was there. And you need to have that background in your story to show the weaving, weaving what happens in that era. And so after a while, I got a phone call from Algiers, and it was an American guy telling me all about it. And I used that in the story, what it was like. And but he wouldn't give me his name. He was, Joe, and he would never let me, call him again. So it's amazing what people tell you. Of course, it's years later, and but a lot of times I'll tell the fleek or the expert in the field, please tell me what bothers you that you see in a book, because we don't want to, it's not. And they go, I want you to get it right. If you're going to write about this, you need to have the logistics correct. We can change the outcome, right? But so I really appreciate that. I go to the archives, I talk to cafe owners, bus drivers, anyone who'll talk to me.
Well, your research sounds fascinating, and of course, it lends a lot of authenticity to your work. We have a comment from Diana in the audience who says you should lead themed tours based on your books and locations. I suspect maybe you've had that suggestion, and you'll be sure to let us know when you do that, and we can let everybody know. I want to take you, on your research, you've covered almost all the arrondissement, and that was a question that came up in the chat. You have literally covered every arrondissement now with this one, right? Oh, no, okay. What's left?
I made a mistake. I put 2 in the 4th arrondissement because I got goofed up. So I have 1 arrondissement left, even though I'm writing that book now, the 19th arrondissement. That's why the canal, right? That's why I have to go and meet the person who runs all the water up there. La Villette, the geode, and yeah. Butokai.
Okay.
No, Buchamont.
Mhm. Okay, so 19th is next. And then after that, everyone's asking if Aimée will move to Brittany.
I don't know. It's a mystery.
Okay.
But I am working on the next Kate Reese, the 3 Hours in Paris. I'm doing a follow-up, not a whatever they call it, sequel. The next, and I'm editing as we speak. That comes out next year, and Kate Reese has gone to 19. We're now in 1942. Kate Reese was an American sniper, so we're in 1942. We have a title for the book, Night Flight to Paris. And I really like that. My friend suggested it, and I said, "Sounds good to me." I don't know.
So you're working now on 2 books at the
same
time.
I am. I'm editing one, and editing. My editor is. I'm not the only writer in my editor's stable. So when she edits, I have to edit. So, but that's fine.
Okay. All right. Well, I've got a couple more questions, and then we'll turn to some great questions that we're getting from the audience. My next one is, all of Aimée's cases are very personal for her. Was that something that you planned from the beginning, or has the character simply taken over and decided what she'll investigate?
Well, I think both things. When I first started, I didn't know what I was doing at all, and the first book is, she never takes those, she runs a detective agency. She's a licensed detective, right? She's inherited it. She works for clients, they pay her. And, she has rent, she has to pay Renee, she has to eat. So, I mean, it's not like private eyes, they're not law enforcement, they have to be paid, and they have to pay bills. So she is, does not want to take a case that is, comes to her because it's for a friend of her father's who's passed away, and said, I can always come to you for help. How can she refuse this man? So she gets pulled in that way. And that's just the way the story came about. But I thought about, and I think that's a great question, because it makes me think, what do I like to read? I like to read books where the person is invested, personally in this. Now, of course, I love police procedurals where a police woman or man comes and does their job. I mean, it's their job. They're not, but of course, maybe we see the reaction, or it reminds them of what happened to them or whatever. But I think when you have that personal tie, however it appears, really brings the reader closer. I like that. And I think that just happened more and more in my book. Again, Aimée runs an agency. She's not a policewoman. And Renee is also always saying, when these things happen, we got to pay the rent. You can only be, so it's always that kind of edgy thing. And of course, like anything, she'll have a regular job, and then she's trying to help someone or take something on. But I think her character is someone who tries to serve justice in whatever way that turns out. And she's often a voice for people who don't have voices.
Well, you mentioned along the lines of Aimée's situations being very personal for you. In some of the cases, it's actually harrowing. Are you able to remain detached from what's happening to her?
No, I'm scared and nervous and pain. You have to feel that to get that on the page. And given the genre, okay, these are murder mysteries. Every book has murder in the title. So, I mean, it gives you an idea. I don't write gratuitous violence or sex but I like to suggest. And I think people in this kind of work, when these stakes are so high, yes, there is, people get hurt. And she's afraid, and the stakes need to be high to make the story compelling, I think. And of course, whenever Aimée is doing anything dangerous, as she does in this story, she's climbing over a roof. She's wearing a leather catsuit and looks fantastic, because I think that's very important. If you're going to go in danger, look good, So, I mean, I can have fun with that as well, to imagine her on the roof. I would never do this. I don't like heights. But I've gone up on roofs in Paris. Not, I haven't done what she's done, but I've gone there. it's scary. It's high, it's slippery, and imagine with a leather catsuit. But, I got to go there and get that. So it can be interesting. It can be, what if I did look like that? What if I could do that? So I think that's fiction, right? It's fiction.
So is Aimée, Cara, is she like an alter ego for you? Do you want her life with the Vespa and the high heels and the little black dress?
I want her apartment. That's what I want. I'll settle for that. The apartment on Ile Saint Louis. Yeah, with good plumbing. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. You have to enjoy what you do. You have to imagine, and I don't wear heels anymore, haven't for many years. The little black dress, I think everyone should have one in a closet. I don't think that's, kind of essential. Dress it up, dress it down, it's always there, ready to go, whatever. So I don't know, it's fun, but I do, when I, go to Paris, I go window shopping with Aimée Leduc. I go, would you wear this? Would you wear this? Or what about, whatever. What could you borrow this from Martine?
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Cara. That's the end of the list of questions that I had prepared, but I've seen we've got some really, really great questions in the chat here. Melissa, would you want to lead off with a couple of those?
Sure. Cara, Marie would like to know, should we read the books in order?
It's a good question. People often ask that, but I wrote this book, and I write every book to stand alone. You can read this book. You meet Aimée at her 3-year-old's birthday party. You get to know everyone in Aimée Leduc's world, and we see the jolt and how things change. So everyone. I think this book stands alone. That said, I often myself pick up a book and I really like it and I like this world and I realize it's like the 6th in the series and I go back and read them all. But you don't have to. Often I say to people, where do you like to stay in Paris? Saint-Germain, Montmartre. I kill them all over. So I've got you covered. You could read Murder in Montmartre, if you're going to stay in Montmartre or wherever, or, if you want to read the prequel with Aimée becoming a detective, that's Murder on the Quai. So again, it's up to your preference. You don't need to.
And you told us a minute ago that you have books set in all the arrondissement except for the 19th. That's coming up, right? Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
And let's see. Oh, Annie suggests that since your next book will be in the 19th, you could locate a murder in the Atelier Hermès in Pantin, which is just outside the 19th, close to the Canal de l'Ourcq.
Has she been there? Does she know how to get there? Any tips?
Annie, if you have tips, you can put them in the chat.
Or let's have Annie come on camera if she will.
Let's see, yeah.
Annie,
you can unmute yourself.
Yes. Well, I am from my family, not me, but my family is from Pantin, and they used to own the space where now the Atelier Hermès are, way back, and so they are located not far from the Porte de Pantin, okay, and and close to the Canal de l'Ourcq, and I'm pretty sure it would be exciting to have a murder there.
I like it. I like how you think.
Arrondissement, there are not so many exciting things. Since I have been we moved there since I was 13 years old, so I know the area pretty well. And so the most exciting would be, yes, I guess the Hermès Atelier Hermès.
When did they put the atelier there? What year?
Oh,
do you know?
long time ago. I was still a teenager when they moved there.
Annie, can we email? Annie, can we email Linda, can you
sure.
connect us?
Yes,
can
yes.
put you in
Actually,
touch, absolutely.
Annie is one of our, she's one of our Federation board members based in Washington, D.C. So we definitely know how to connect you with her, Cara. We will definitely do that.
Please, Annie, let's connect real soon because I'm leaving next week. Thank you. I will go there. Thank you. Wow. Who knew? See?
And
Melissa.
also, there used to be on the Canal de Lourdes, since we are talking about this, there used to be the atelier of a fashion school. And they were right on the Canal de Lourdes and in Paris the 19th. But I think they moved. I'm not sure, but I think they moved. I will have to check on this because that's also a nice place to have something going on there.
Definitely. Definitely.
You know, because it is cheaper in that side, this is where you will find atelier of very famous makers or fashion, the fashion industry or whatever. Yes.
Okay, we need to.
Innovated the Canal de Lourdes. It's a very nice walk now.
Okay,
Yeah.
Definitely.
Merci,
Definitely.
Alicia.
Go.
We'll get the two of you in touch.
Please, please.
Cara, we have another question. If somebody would like to know if you could tell the story of how you decided to make René a dwarf.
René is a dwarf. Yes, he and I know Linda has heard this story many times, so I apologize, Linda. I get often asked this, but I used to be a preschool teacher here in San Francisco, and we were going to hire a new teacher. I was on a committee, or several of us. We interviewed people, and one of the interviewees for a teacher was a dwarf, and she had all the qualifications, the certificate, experience, had worked with children, and anyway, so I looked at everything, and I have to say, inside, I felt she wasn't tall enough to put things away. It's a very manual job. You got to lift and put things away. You have to help children. It's very physical, and I also felt shamefully, what if the children laughed at her or wouldn't listen to her because of her height? Okay, so this was me inside thinking this. Anyway, we all voted. We voted on another candidate who was also very well qualified. And so I didn't think anything more about it. And then 2 months later, I think I went to we used to have a sister preschool down at Embarcadero in San Francisco. And I was going there early for, a big meeting. And I went early to see the art project because I heard one teacher was doing this great one. I wanted to go steal ideas because we do that. And went early, sitting in the room. The table's very low. The children are all wearing their smocks and, listening to the teacher and everything. And I was like taking notes, and I was like, where's the teacher? The teacher was the woman we did not hire, who was at the table in a smock, working with the children, involved. All the children were bringing materials, putting them away in roast. I mean, I was like, and it just hit me. And I was like, she was amazing. The kids were so responsive to her. She had control over them. She was doing this super cool project. And I had been the one who had made the mistake. I had looked at her disability, not her ability, or her ability to teach the children life lessons, And I was just really ashamed and sorry that our children missed out on having her and that experience. So I think when I started writing and knowing, Aimée needed, she needs a backup person, she needs a sidekick, she needs a partner in the agency, right? She can't do it alone. This person came to me, and I think I wrote that person as a dwarf because I was assuaging my guilt over not hiring the teacher, but also that I had looked at her disability, and everyone looks at René's height first. You can't get away from that. But they're always focusing on that, not on that he's brilliant, not that he's, a natty dresser and wearing handmade Charvet shirts and all that, but, more on that. And he's constantly having issues. And, for René, there's a scene in the story here where it doesn't spoil anything when I say it, but he's meeting his girlfriend at the bar, at a cafe bar in the 15th and in the Iranians. And she's it's so hard for him to get on the stool. Just think about it, because it's for us of a certain height. It's very hard for him to get on the stool. It's rainy, it's cold. That's when his hip dysplasia kicks into gear. He's suffering, constantly. He lives with that. And so I thought, and Amy's always, oh, come on, let's go to the cafe. And and she's like, oh yeah, that's right. You can't sit on the stool. She's like totally not thinking. And she feels bad too when she realizes. But I think a character who plays a role, secondary role, but he's certainly involved in the story. He's Chloe's godfather. It's good to bring out, I'm not trying to preach, but it's kind of like, let's look at people differently, hopefully. But that's a great test unit, and thank you.
That's a great story. We have a couple of other questions from the chat, which Melissa can bring up. And then I just wanted to tell everybody that Cara has sent us about 5 or 6 images that I think we'll go over after a couple more questions. And I think everybody can look forward to that. Go ahead, Melissa.
When you interview people in Paris, how often are the interviews in French and how often are they in English? And then as a follow-up question, how did you get to be such a big Francophile in the first place?
Well, a lot of the conversations are in French, so it's tricky. I take notes or I tape record, record with my phone. But a lot of times that doesn't work because you want to just have this personal thing and you just want them to talk. So it's about, getting what I can understand, asking my friends later, is this what they meant? Because honestly, these guys speak slang, these cops, and I'm like, oh my God. So I have a policewoman friend, and I run over things with her. What did this mean or whatever, or she comes with me sometimes or not. Sometimes it's in English, I just make do. And I understand a lot of French. Again, when you're talking in the, boeuf, when you talk in the slang, it's harder to catch up. And why do I write about France? I'm a Francophile. I love Paris. Anything that I can do that gets me back there, and writing is hard, but the joy is going to Paris and being there and trying to get that on the page. I love it. I don't understand the French people, and when I do, then I'll stop writing about them. I'll write about the Italians. I don't know. No one understands the Italians.
Cara, do the French? Oh, I'm sorry. Do the French read your murder series?
2 of my books have been translated.
Okay. And in terms of the fashion in your books, do you research the fashion of the era in which the book takes place?
Definitely. Yes, I love going to. I have old Elle magazines. I have, especially when I wrote about Murder on the Quai, the prequel. That's in 1989. When the story was set, when Amy becomes a detective. So I went to the flea markets in Paris, or look at Vogue from 1989, or found things in my closet, or I really tried to be age authentic. But I was just looking today in the New York Times, they were talking about the jean jacket. What do you do with all your jean jackets? Are they just passé? And I was like, no, people wear jean jackets today over a little black dress. And that jean jackets have been around forever, right? So don't throw your jean jackets out, they're saying, this article. But a jean jacket with a good scarf, with a little black dress, is timeless. If you don't get the jean jacket, there is, of course, the Chanel vintage that you could hopefully find at a flea market or a couture shop. Didier Ludo, I don't know if he still has them, has shops in the Palais Royal, under the arcades. He used to have one shop, the little black dress shop, that he would buy, Chanel, good condition, Guerlain, or Balenciaga, you name it. And he would, refurbish them, and they weren't cheap then. But I think if you buy a few pieces of good quality, they last, right? You can have them for a long time. They're timeless. So sometimes I'm paying a little more for quality, a good bag or a good coat, you know, and kind of mix and match, you know, throw it together. I think that can really work. It doesn't, not people that I know wear all haute couture, but
Hey, I wanted to thank a couple of people in the audience for making really good suggestions and comments. Well, of course, all the questions have been great, but Jill commented that she listened to the Audible version of the Murder in the Porte de Versailles and said the narrator was fantastic. So just to remind the audience that the Audible versions are available with this latest book. And then Anne commented, and I never thought of doing this, so I really appreciate her comment, that she is enjoying reading the book on the Kindle app, copying the addresses out, and then going to Google Maps and seeing the actual locations in the 360 view. So I thought that was extremely clever. Thank you, Anne and Jill, for those two comments.
that's great. That's really great.
I think we have maybe one more question before we turn to the slides. Alice would like to know, when we run out of your books, can you suggest another author that you like who writes mysteries set in Paris or France?
Yes, Martin Walker. Well, his are set down in the Dordogne. I'm sure a lot of you know, the wine and the food, and Martin himself is a gourmet cook and has a vineyard. I mean, what's not to love about Martin Walker? Also, M.L. Longworth. She's a friend. She writes about Aix-en-Provence. I'm sorry, I can't remember the titles, but it's M.L. initials Longworth. And several of her books, they're now on Murder in Provence on one of those TV channels. It's gorgeous. It's beautiful. So that's Aix-en-Provence and Dordogne. I think there's a man who writes about Brittany Banalouk. Banalouk. And I think he is also like a Swiss person. Martin is English. Of course, he lives there, and ML is Canadian, and I'm American, and we're all foreigners writing about France. You know, I'm not. That's probably the only thing we share in common, because we write very different books. But I think that's so interesting. Banalouk, did someone get? Yeah, Martin Walker, M.L. Longworth, someone. Jean-Luc, Mark Pryor, right? Mark Pryor. M.L. Longworth, yeah.
Yes, we know Martin Walker very well at the Alliance Française. He was actually the recipient of our Prix Charbonnier Award in October last year. So we're very familiar with him. I think, Melissa, maybe you can go ahead and bring up the photos and the images that Cara has shared with us. Go ahead and move. There we go. There we go. Oh. And yeah, can you explain why you like this slide, Cara?
Well, thanking Melissa for enlarging this, but this is what is basically a metro map. I just found it on Instagram, and I have nothing to do with it, but it's a young man who took the metro map and he made it a cultural map. So it's basically the lines of the metro, and you have the like Lafayette Haussmann, right? Opera Comique, Notre Dame de Comique. So like the cultural viewpoint, you know, down here, the Gobelin, the museum, Natural History Museum. So I just thought it was fun. You know, he just took a lot of time, but I think it's really like where the Moulin Rouge is, just fun.
Great. And the next slide, Melissa?
That is Duluth Detective Agency, where I, went and met Martine. And just before the pandemic, Martine, who ran the agency for 50 years, inheriting it from her father, retired and has sold the agency. But she said she was always going to make sure it was a detective agency and they would never take that sign down. So you may have seen it if you're Paris. There's just that's at the flea market. And of course the patisserie, because you cannot, it's very hard to pass a patisserie, especially, when they have that in the window. Just thought I'd whet everyone's appetite. And that's a corner in the 15th arrondissement, somewhere at night. just to get a flavor of going. I think up that street or the next one is where the police laboratory is. And this is sort of what it was like that night when, it happened and Amy rushed over. There's a wonderful bookstore, I believe down this street where the lights are. It's called Le Divan, Divan. And it's a French bookstore. I think there's a few of them. And it's a wonderful place. I went in there once on a rainy day and I just felt engulfed by wonderful books. There's a great children's area. Everything is pastel and colored. And I loved it. I sat down on a sofa, I dried off and, got some books. It's a French bookstore, but I have to say it ended up in the book. Amy and Renee and another person end up in the Le Divan bookstore. So it's just a wonderful bookstore. They're very community oriented. They have a lot of, author events. They're having one this week, which I'll miss because it's an author I like. I mean, it's, but I really like that. I really like this feeling of community in the 15th. I don't think I really talked about it much, but, having a residential quiet area is, has its points, when you have children. And there we go, La Chatte. I just thought that was nice. And often you get to see that in the window on the street when you pass by. A little taste of Paris, that's it.
Okay, thank you for sharing those images. And there was quite a lot of interest in the cultural map. So we'll get the Instagram link from you or send a JPEG out in a follow-up email that we'll send out to all of the registrants for today's event. And then Cara, you and I had talked earlier about discussing very briefly, you would be interested from the audience and their recommendations on if they were to meet with you in Paris, would they recommend a particular cafe? And right. I'll start off by saying that if I was going to meet with you in Paris, I would suggest meeting at the Place de la Contrescarpe. There are at least 2 cafes there, and I would go there because I found out after I lived in Paris that it actually is a very historically significant area of the city, which I was completely oblivious of at the time. So I would like to go back there. But the audience is invited to put their recommendations to Cara, and maybe she'll use it in her research for her next book. And so it looks like you've got Le Divan. Do you know that one, Cara?
Well, that's the bookstore that I was talking about.
Oh, the Divan, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, any recommendations from our audience for their favorite cafes that they would like to meet Cara at? I can also think of the ones at the Place Saint-Michel.
Mm-hmm.
Those are great. Oh, we've got some coming in now. And Cara will make the chat available to you, of course. Le Zimmer, which sounds very German. Wow, Café Marly.
That's isn't that across from the Sarah Bernhardt Theater? Or what used to be called the Théâtre de Saint near well, they can tell us where. I think I know.
Okay, you've got quite a few people seconding Le Procope, c'est ça? Melissa, you're nodding. Where is Le Procope? Do you know?
It's in the Latin Quarter. It's very, very old, but it's more of a restaurant. Oh no, it's in that I think it's down that street. I killed someone right near there. Why can't I remember that? I just
you killed someone right near there? Okay.
on the page. I'm sorry. I know it at the time, and it's in Saint-Germain. Yes. Oh, right. Oh. Come on, give us the address there. I can see it. I know where it is. Yes.
Well, lots of great ideas, which we will share with Cara. We are, what did the French say? Admirablement dans le temps. So we're right almost at the close of the hour. If we don't have any other questions, Cara, do you want to go ahead and wrap it up for us?
I just want to say I would love to see you all in Paris, honestly, wherever, La Procope or, Place des Vosges or wherever, the Crêperie. I would say we would get a big table. We'd get a what you call it, of champagne, a magna, a big one, you know, and all the, you know, what do you call the seafood platter with many la fruits de mer.
Cookie Saint-Jacques. Voilà.
Exactly. And we would all be together and have an Alliance Française meeting there. But until then, merci beaucoup. À bientôt. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you, Linda. And don't forget to put me in contact with Annie.
Will do. Thanks everybody for coming. Thanks Melissa for her work, and hope to catch all of you at the next presentations that you'll find on afusa.org. Merci et bon week-end à tout le monde.
Bon week-end.